Good evening, and welcome to the week's news in capsule form, sort of current affairs equivalent of X-Lax. In the news this week, Michael Heseltine is shown disturbing evidence that watching too much TV can have harmful side effects. In order to raise funds following the Windsor fire, the royal family prepare to open the new Windsor Castle Disneyland. And finally, fears are expressed that the former leader of the Labour Party may have found solace in mind-expanding drugs. On Ian Hislop's team, a comedian who claims to share a birthday with Haile Selassie and Michael Foot. Funny, she doesn't look that old. Please welcome Joe Brand. And on Paul Merton's side this week, a man who, according to his wife, only looks at a map once he's lost. So we've an atlas standing by for him and Paul at the end of the show. Neil Kinnock MP. And with the scores excitingly poised at 0-all, we give the teams their first opportunity to commit unforced errors with two pieces of news film to identify. Ian and Joe, what hasn't this person been up to this week?
This is the story of Lamont. There are two Lamont stories this week, sadly, one right on top of another. It's funny how bad luck comes like that, isn't it? First, someone revealed the contents of his access bill, saying that he'd been into their shop and bought a bottle of champagne and 100 raffles, which he hadn't, apparently.
It's a bit of an odd thing to make up, because I think you're going to make up something about someone coming into your shop. I mean, I'd have Mother Teresa with a rent boy ordering a crate of Newcastle Brown, making it exciting. And I'm also a bit upset that he's on champagne, because I heard he likes strong lager. I heard he gets on the tenants after work, but...
Yes, it is Norman Lamont's turbulent week, and the revelation that Treasury ministers paid £4,000 to help evict sex therapist Miss Whiplash. Still, her presence in his house may explain the words of one newspaper this week. Norman Lamont appears to be perpetually strapped for cash. Two Threshers staff now mysteriously claim they invented the story about Lamont turning up at their Paddington branch and have since gone into hiding. Curious they should make up stories about the Chancellor being there, given that one of them told his girlfriend before the press ever got hold of it. And the woman in the shop next door backs up the story too. Even more curious is the fact that the owners of Threshers pay £30,000 to Tory party funds and have an exclusive contract to supply the Cabinet Office. The words rat and smell immediately spring to mind. Paul and Neil, what variation on a theme is this?
Council tax.
Well spotted.
There it is again, look.
It's been drawn up by curb-crawling estate agents. They go driving around and say what your house is worth. And they also use helicopters, it appears. So you're a bit stuck if you just got a flooded back garden and they say, he's got a swimming pool.
Bands A to H are all the same nowadays, aren't they? Band A, you can't sell your house. Band B, you can't sell your house.
Yes, it is the Conservatives' latest attempt at local taxation, the council tax, which is an innovative new scheme based on the value of properties, the like of which hasn't been seen since they abolished it 3 years ago in favour of poll tax. Part of the criticism has been about the method of valuation, purely based on the property's external appearance. So if you live in what looks like a beautiful castle, but inside it is an uninhabitable shell, you're probably the Queen. The government has insisted that people can always appeal against their assessment. The maximum they get back is £25, and the cost of the appeal is £50. The words bastards and complete immediately spring to mind. Ian and Joe, a case of nighttime robbery for you.
I shagged him.
You think that would be him? Oh, yeah. Oh. We all have in our own way, haven't we?
Not personally, no, but...
That's Terry Wogan getting desperate for people to watch his programme, so paying Cher an awful lot of money, 20 grand, a pound for every year of her life, to come on his show. I'm not bitter. Well, you know, she got 20 grand, right? I got 800. She got a new bum, and I went down quick fit and had one of my blackheads squeezed.
It's a lovely image, I must say.
You can see why it would cost 20,000 to fly her over, because they have to do it in bits and then reassemble her here.
It is the revelation that almost £20,000 a time is being handed over to celebrities for 5-minute appearances on Friday night with Wogan, as a result of which next week's edition of Have I Got News For You will be presented by Alan Titchmarsh. Leslie Nielsen...
Nice suit. I always think brown is tremendously underrated.
As a colour, I'm just going to blow my nose to make sure that this gets edited out.
The words
not very
cowardly
British.
off.
Sorry.
I'll just carry on saying it then. Brown suit.
Right, where were we? Oh, yes.
We were talking about your brown suit.
Oh, dear. When we approached Wogan's producer, Peter Esthor, for clips from the show, he wrote back saying, I can imagine the context in which they're going to be used. I will therefore not be signing your document to give permission for clips to be used. I will not expect to see them in your programme. Oh, well, that's showbiz. Paul and Neil, whose consent is being sought for this?
Oh, yes. This is the sadomasochistic... Oh, hello. Who got in ready?
The General Synod, isn't it?
They had this big demo, and to make them really miserable, nobody came. It was very sadomasochistic. They got charged by the police.
The one bloke had his sexual organs wired up to the Christmas lights in Regent Street. And so when they were sort of turned on, you know, the Regent Street was full of colour, and you could just hear this voice going, "My God, yes!"
There's a photograph of him in a brown suit.
Yeah. It's one of the telltale signs.
Yes.
Do you know you're sitting in broken glass?
Yes, I was that man, I admit it. Yes, it is the appeal to the law lords by 5 men who were jailed for inflicting injury on each other in a sexual orgy, despite the fact they not only gave their consent, but had a whale of a time in the process. The 5 were convicted of taking part in genital torture, including sandpapering the testicles, passing wires through the groin, and safety pins through each other's penises. Don't know why they didn't just have done with it and buy a Black & Decker workmate.
Why have you just read all that out, Angus?
Because he enjoys it.
All of which perfectly normal behaviour brings us cascading to the end of this opening bout, and I can inform you that, as usual at this stage of the proceedings, there's no sign of the impending carnage, as both teams have a perfect 4. Round 2 awaits, pregnant with anticipation, but just by way of a brief diversion, let's show the panellists a couple of arresting images. Ian and Joe, here's your curiosity. The lovely Mrs. Bottomley there. And Paul and Neil, that's yours. So let's check the rearview mirror and pull out into round 2. 1 tabloid excess per person. What's behind it all? Paul. Moth is dead loss.
there's a type of moth, Hercules moth, has hatched. A male moth has hatched, but there's no female moths around. He's got a week to mate with another moth, so he's desperately flying around with a bottle of champagne and a packet of fags.
In the week that it's got, this moth, it can be officially disclosed, grows to 11 inches, wingspan. And
I was going to say, it's a wonder it gets off the ground.
I'll chip them across, you knock them in.
It's a Hercules moth, the largest one and one of the rarest in the world, which sadly came to the end of its short life just 5 minutes before a prospective mate arrived by car from South Yorkshire. It would have been there sooner, but it had difficulty with the hand signals. Once born, the Hercules moth blooms colourfully for just 3 days before withering away to nothing. Still, it's longer than Bros. The reason the moth's life is so short is that it has no mouth and therefore can't eat anything, only a slight flaw in the evolutionary process. And this means it has just 72 hours in which to find a member of the opposite sex and mate with it. Still, having no mouth should cut out a number of the preliminaries. The moth has now been mounted, but not in the way that would have made its life worthwhile. Neil, it's Heil Thatcher. What's that all about?
Oh, this is about one of the most disgraceful and infamous attacks on one of the most beloved figures of our generation.
What, Hitler?
And somebody actually plastered or drew a moustache on a picture of Baroness Thatcher. And it was the police have pulled in about 12 million suspects. and next week, do you know what's going to happen next week? They're going to colour in John Major. So, it'll be a real challenge to us.
It is the disturbing news that some irresponsible vandal has had the audacity to paint a Hitler moustache on the portrait of Mrs. Thatcher, or Baroness Thatcher, sorry, in the Commons coffee room. It must be the first time she's been touched up since Cecil left. Investigators think that the vandal is probably a long-time rival of Mrs. Thatcher's from an opposition party and recently freed from the constraints of official responsibility. No names have been issued. Suffice to say, this studio has been surrounded. Joe, who's producing condensed soap?
Well, I just thought, I don't know, I thought it might be a new sort of soap for someone who's very small and very dirty, like Jim Davidson, maybe.
Train has been condensed into no episodes at all ever again.
And nobody noticed.
You're clutching at straws. No, tell them what it is.
It's an Australian epic called Young Doctors.
It is.
It's been condensed from 215 episodes of 6,000 minutes, I've been swatting, to 3 minutes. And Yorkshire Television, who are doing this masterly task, say they've kept the best bit.
Yes, it is. Excellent. 2 points. It's the news that
Who said Kinnock couldn't do figures?
Absolutely. I've got them tattooed on my eyelids, it's...
Ian, what skullduggery lurks here? Glenda vote rig storm.
Oh, this is a storm about vote rigging over Glenda Jackson. This is in Hampstead, a traditional Labour constituency of working class intellectuals. And apparently there were a number of irregularities in the votes there.
It is. The discovery that Labour MP Glenda Jackson won her seat in the Commons with the help of 600 forged votes. Detective Sergeant Michael Corby confirmed that forgery and counterfeiting had occurred, but there had been no breach of election law. Well, no breach of Filipino election law, maybe. Still, just imagine what would have happened if Glenda hadn't won. The election could have been a disaster for Labour. Which Thespian Tales brings us to the end of this round, and the situation is that, Ian and Joe have a rather bland 6, and Paul and Neil have a quite excellent 10. And so
Don't
we-
have to worry about Kinnock being ahead at an early stage.
And so we roll up the trouser leg of time and imac the hairs of history, by which I, of course, refer, if somewhat indecipherably...
You're just talking rubbish.
OK, it's the archive round. There we are. Two questions of identity. Ian and Joe, who are these couple of swells sharing an embarrassing moment by the piano?
My old man said follow the van and don't dilly-dally on the way.
Well, that was Marmaduke Hussey on piano.
And Cher down in the corner. I think one of them's Roy Hattersley, singing and doubling up as the sluice at the same time as well.
Nick Rainsford is the guy standing against the wall.
That's well spotted, yes. We might get a mark.
And that's Mrs. Ethel Hargreaves in the chair.
It is.
It is.
No,
yeah.
it isn't. Let's unveil the truth.
The Liberace.
You like the old time couple when you find your way home.
Yeah, I'll give you one each. It's actually Susanna York and Roy Hattersley,
Why did they get a point?
because they got the
It's
other
been very
guy.
good. So,
What do you mean they got the other one? You mean when they didn't say Susanna York, you gave them a point?
No, they got the third politician by the piano.
Well, anyone could say Nick Rainsford.
Did you say Nick Rainsford?
Twice.
No, you didn't.
All right.
We did, but we said it in
I've been
code.
got to by Thresher.
Susanna York was one of a number of celebrities to lend their support to the Labour Party, such as Stephen Fry and Richard Attenborough, all of whom were dismissed by Conservatives as champagne socialists, or as Norman Lamont would say, 3 bottles of white wine socialists. Paul and Neil.
What is that colour actually called? Is it called creosote?
I'm not sure. Doesn't say.
what is it?
Says Winfield. Paul and Neil's the more
What did Mr.
self-abused
Winfield
view.
say when you took his suit?
Thank you.
Where were we? Oh, yes, middle of the archive round. Paul and Neil, your question, more self-abuse for you. Which popular hero is this?
They want me to stop. Oh, no, you don't. Oh, yes, they do.
That's George and Gilly Wilson.
Definitely.
Yeah, in the audience, George and Gilly Wilson.
Any idea who's in the green?
Oh, the Green. Robin Hood.
The person who was on that thing was actually sitting next to Merton 2 weeks ago, which shows his stunning powers of perception. It's a man called Ken Livingstone. You may remember him in the dim and distant 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but he wasn't wearing green.
Let's unmask the culprit.
Vanish. Won't you relent, please? They want me to stop.
It is Ken Livingstone, MP, or that stupid Pratt, as he was called by one of us in the studio in 1989. Wasn't he, Neil?
No, I think he was much, much worse than that. Much worse than that.
Which, apology for a history lesson, brings us to the end of round 3, and the thickening plot is that, well, Ian and Joe are starting to flag with 9, and Paul and Neil continue to impress with 11. There now follows a short odd one out round. 4 leaders in their various fields. Which one is the Gerald Ratner? Paul, a suitably obtuse one for you. Eddie the Eagle, Pope John Paul II, Mrs. Colin Moynihan, and Fergie.
The Pope doesn't go skiing.
Well,
Isn't the answer that they are all very good skiers apart from Eddie the Eagle?
well, you're both almost there, but I'll give one to Paul. It's the Pope, as all the others have been involved in major skiing accidents. The Pope is nonetheless a keen skier and claims the alpine ski resorts remind him of Poland. There he is. You spend the whole day queuing and no one can afford the food. Eddie the
And
Eagle.
the Germans barge in when you're not looking.
Eddie the Eagle said that despite breaking several limbs, nothing can beat that fraction of a second of excitement on takeoff. That's the fraction of a second he remains in the air. Colin Moynihan's wife, Gaynor, broke her knee on their honeymoon, probably tripped over her husband's head. Neil, some familiar foes for you. Douglas Hurd, Harold Wilson, Mrs. Thatcher's chief whip, John Wakeham, and John Stonehouse.
Douglas Hurd, Harold Wilson, and John Wakeham can't swim. Well, John Stonehouse can't at the moment, because he died, poor man. But
He could probably float at a push.
It's Harold Wilson, as all the others married their secretaries, whereas Harold's relationship with his secretary was, of course, entirely above board. John Stonehouse, who married his secretary Sheila, was a former Labour MP and crook who disappeared in the Atlantic Ocean and was presumed drowned, until Mirror reporters found him alive and well in Australia. Let's hope history doesn't repeat itself. Joe, for Fighters of Lost Causes for you. Edward Heath, John Major, our friend, Mr. Kinnock, and Andre Previn.
Well, I have to say I think it's Neil, because he's the only one that's had his picture taken in a photo me booth in Woolworths.
about for a passport, though, isn't it?
No, they've all been conductors except John Major.
He was turned
Very
down
good.
because he was too thick, wasn't he?
It's true. Yes, very good. It is John Major, as all the others have conducted orchestras or bands, whereas John Major once applied for the job of bus conductor but was turned down because he wasn't up to it. I wonder if the Europeans know that the finer points of EC fiscal policy are being decided by someone who can't work out 2 adult returns to Bethnal Green. Andre Previn has a bit of a penchant for the ladies and has...
You can't get returns on a bus.
You can on coaches, though, can't you, Paul?
Yes, and you can on trains, but you can't on buses.
Yeah, well, I think he was applying for a coach job.
Really?
Yeah. And finally, in this round, Ian, 4 disparate souls for you. Lord Whitelaw, Mark Thatcher, Gary Newman, and Gavin Nash, aged 9.
Who's Gary Newman?
He's leader of a popular beat combo.
Right, well, he's the only one I don't know, so I think he's the odd one out.
No, if you know who the little boy is, you'll know the answer to the question.
Has he got the other 3 locked in a cupboard?
I'm afraid you're nowhere near, Paul, sadly.
Oh, I know, they've all sold arms except Mark Thatcher.
Well, you're not far off. The answer is that all of them own guns, apart from multi-millionaire Mark Thatcher, who, as the Commons heard this week, helps flog them to Middle East dictatorships. Lord Whitelaw went on a shooting party in 1984 and managed to shoot not only one of the beaters, but his host, Sir Joseph Nickerson. Gavin Nash is one of a number of small boys who've been granted a shotgun licence. Incredible, isn't it? You have to be 16 to have sex, 18 to watch other people have sex, but only 9 to be given the wherewithal to blow someone's brains out. Arms deals involving Mark Thatcher were being investigated recently by British journalist Jonathan Moyle, who was found dead in a Chilean hotel, having received a lethal injection in the heel. The British Embassy refused to help local police and even tried to make out that Moyle had died of masturbation. Doesn't make you feel proud to be British. On which slightly terrifying note, we call an end to this farrago, and the obvious dilemma concerns, well, neither team particularly, because they both have around 13 points. And so we unleash the pandemonium that is our final missing words round. So I'll just pick alphabetical order, I suppose. Ian and Joe, you go for it. Charles, I won't take die where?
Up for Gary Glitter.
Sorry. It's
Is
an
it
excellent
abroad?
answer. It is abroad, but I won't
take
give
you
it
on
to you for saying
holiday.
that.
I
To
don't think you
USA.
should call the Princess of Wales abroad, you know.
He's called a much worse thing than that, I can tell you. Next, Major is urged to attack what?
Major is urged to attack Poland by Mrs. Thatcher.
Attack the Serbs. About bloody
Very
time.
good, Serbia. Excellent, 2 points. Next, BBC moves where to survive?
Moves nearer the government's bottom.
That is not correct. Upmarket is in fact the answer. And lastly, Tebbit wanted to be what?
None.
Prime Minister.
Is the right answer.
Wow.
Yes.
I heard
Really?
the programme.
Wanted to be Prime Minister, but then didn't we all? Paul and Neil, try your hand at this lot. Queen Mother combines her duties with a love of what?
Champagne and Raffles fags.
Is it Scare Electrics?
Super Nintendo.
Is it Renaissance Spanish church music? Horses.
Horses, yes, I'll give you one for horses. Horses and entertaining is the answer. Next, Betty Maxwell sells what?
Is it very wet three-piece suit?
It's memoirs.
Yeah,
This
family
memoirs.
heirlooms.
Next, Yard's new chief urges police to abandon what?
Hope.
Rule book?
Social engineering is the answer. And finally, a number of sexual partners linked to what?
Each other.
Is it,
Mathematically precise, but not actually
is
true.
it off licence?
Mobility and cash is in fact the answer we're looking for, so good news for Nigel Mansell. Which brief homage to the art of guesswork brings us spinning to the end of this battle of half-wits. And tragically, this week's pig trotters are Paul and Neil with 15, and this week's lucky rabbit's feet are Ian and Joe with 18. So before the final whistle, a brief period to be added on for injuries in the form of our caption competition. Ian and Joe, what have you thought of for this one?
Well, I think Virginia should be saying, I don't know why my mouth is so close to this phone, it's not the orifice I normally talk out of.
I thought this was about her family being shrunk to the size like that high.
Honey, I've shrunk the health service.
Very good. Paul and Neil, this one was yours.
Lamont Lyon official.
I wouldn't want one of them swimming up my arse. Or the soft toy, for that matter.
On which nourishing note, we say thank you to our guests Ian Hislop and Joe Brand, Paul Merton and Neil Kinnock. And I leave you with news that British Rail's new station design has come in for criticism on safety grounds. A shock news that Elvis Presley may not only be still alive, but that he's also started breeding. And finally, Norman Lamont spends a quiet night in with his family. Good night.